Okay, so we're going to make a sill pan out of vinyl coil stock, and the first thing we have to do is rip the rough stock to width. In this case it's going to be a 4 9/16 jam with a 5/8 inch upturned leg and a 2 inch downturned leg. So I'm going to take my construction master here and I'm going to add 4 inch 9/1/6 plus 0 inch 5/8 plus 2 inch. Okay, so that's 7 3/16. I want to offset it 1.5 inches to allow for the cutter on the break. So I'm going to go minus 1 inch 1/2 equals 5 11/16. So I'm going to mark 5 11/16 and then make the cut. So I take my straight edge here and I mark 5 11/16 at the end, 5 11/16 at the middle, and 5 11/16 at the end. Okay, now I'm going to set it in the break on those marks. So I set it on the marks, and I clamp the brake down on those dimensions. Now the slitter attaches at this end, and it offsets 1.5 inches. That's why I subtracted 1.5 inches. So I just run it along here, and then when I come to the end there, I reset it so I can get maximum width out of my material. So I've run it through, and now I have the proper width. So now I'm going to set up and make the first bend. The first bend will be the upturned leg, and that's going to be 5/8 of an inch. So I set my combination square to 5/8 of an inch, and once again I make my mark, one mark at the end, one at the middle, and one at the other end. And I set that in the break. I close the break down close to the marks, check it, set it tight, and now I make the bend. And because it's vinyl and it springs back, I go for an overbend. Okay, so that's my first bend. Now my second bend, in order to make it production, I use these gauging blocks, and so I don't have to measure that one. So I set the gauge blocks on the edge like that. I set those in the break, and here's where it gets a little funny looking, but it works. Use my head to push it down, push it right up to the edge of the gauge blocks, set it, pull it down, and make the bend. And once again I overbend so it'll keep the shape I want it at 90 degrees. And I pull it out of the break, and now we're going to bend the end caps. Okay, so now to make the end caps, what I do is I take the lineal here and I just cut the end cap the same depth as the jam width is. In this case it was 4 9/16, so I come in here at 4 9/16 and I make a mark. I use my speed square to square that mark out, and I'm also going to split this in half to make the outside facing piece. So then I simply take my utility knife, snap blade utility knife, so I can constantly have a fresh sharp edge, and I make the cuts through here, a couple of pulls through there, and I have it. And then for the end I just make the same kind of a cut using my speed square as a straight edge, a couple of cuts, and it should be ready to go. So now I've made my 2 cuts. Okay, so now there's 2 folds to make here. The first fold is I want to make a facing piece, and so I bend that out like that so that when it's done it has a nice piece on the face. And the other bend I make is on the end to make the end dam, and I just fold that under and push it up there, and I use my thumbs to squeeze that tight. Now I have an end dam formed with a face on it. So now we're going to go ahead and glue it up. Okay, before we glue anything up, we always want to clean up the pieces. So I'm just going to take a rag and wipe it off. I don't need any primer. In this case, I'm using some glue from Christie's. It's a really fast PVC type glue. You can use any kind of PVC glue. I like the fast stuff. This may not be available where you are, so you can just get the Christie's Red Hot Blue Glue or any of that blue PVC glue that's fast setting. So I've cleaned it up. Now what I'm going to do is rub Plenty of glue on the bottom piece. I don't have to put it on both pieces. This is not a pipe joint. I just want it to be watertight. So I'm going to rub the glue in there, and then I'm going to make this fold around underneath like that. And anytime you're gluing PVC, you should tack it. You push it together and take it apart and then push it together again. Now I'm going to set it like that. Now I have some pre-made clamps here. This is just some squeeze clamps with some wood blocks, hot melt glue onto the back of them. So I'm going to take that and squeeze that in there. And I'm going to let that set. Now this glue sets up pretty fast. Typically within 15 minutes. On a warm day like today it might take only 10. But anyway, I allow 15 minutes. So now I'm ready to start gluing up the other end. In this case, my opening is 36 inches. I've checked it. So I'm going to hook my tape right in the block here and pull 36 inches. Plus I want to add 4 9/16 for the end dam. So that's going to be 36 plus 4 9/16 is 40 and 9/16. So I've made my 2 marks there. So I'm going to pull those through. Now, always whenever you're cutting stuff like this, you need to make sure that you know which ones. That's the waste part, so that's my mark that I will make for the waste that I'm going to throw away. I'll bring that up there. I'm going to cut that piece completely off. And this one's going to be the mark that I make for my fold. So I'm going to take my snips here and just snip the end. And once again, I'm using vinyl coil stock. This could be used with any kind of coil stock. Aluminum is not raw aluminum is not recommended, just because it has a certain amount of reactivity with cement and concrete and other products. So I prefer the vinyl coil stock. Okay, so once I've got this made, then I'm going to switch this around to the other end and do the same process for my cutting. So I'm going to take my speed square here. Make that cut, and I'll cut from this direction just so you can see it. Normally I wouldn't cut that way because I'm concerned about cutting into the body of the sill pan, but just for appearance so you can see it, I'll do that. Now in this case what I'm going to do is finish up my cut with my snips just so I don't ruin the sill pan. You can always make this cut with these snips anyway. So now I've got my cuts made. So remember, we have 2 cuts to make here. We want to fold out flat the facing piece, and then the end dam, we just return it in on itself. So we just fold that in, hold it up, and I use my thumbs to pinch the corner. Okay, we're going to go ahead and glue this one up. In this case, I don't always have enough blocks made up. The thing is, these will work with the spring clamp and the squeeze clamp that's not glued to it. So I clean it up, wipe it off. I'm going to apply the glue. Smear it over real good. This is just fast setting glue, so you don't want to spend too much time fiddling around. I want to set it, pull it apart to tack it. Now I'm going to set my clamps in place. Obviously, if you're making up a lot of these, you need a lot of space to do that. Now everything's held in place. This will give me full, even pressure over the entire glue joint. Okay, now I'm going to set that and let that one set for about another 10 minutes before I go to apply it. If I were making more of them, I would just continue fabricating until my table was full or the job was done. So that's how you make up sill pans with vinyl coil stock and glue.